In just a few days, on November 1st, the first users outside of the early access program that's been running for some months will be able to start getting their hands on Microsoft 365 Copilot. But as it stands, while Microsoft will refer to this as this product becoming generally available, there are some big stipulations on who will be able to get it that may make many of you feel that it is actually far from generally available. In this video, I'm going to look at those stipulations, make some suggestions about why they might exist, and consider what the future might be for getting access to Microsoft 365 Copilot for those organisations left out in the cold with this initial release. But first, what is Microsoft 365 Copilot? It's an infusion of generative AI into the apps you use every day, like Outlook and Word. With Microsoft 365 Copilot, you have AI features built directly into your apps and built upon the data you already have in Microsoft 365. This means that not only can you get amazing generative AI capabilities in your apps, but you can do so while easily integrating the context from your existing documents, spreadsheets, emails and chats, all in an intuitive way. So who might be getting this November 1st? Thanks for watching. If this content is useful to you, please do hit the like button so we can share it with as many interested people as possible. And if you want to see more like this, remember to subscribe and hit that bell icon so you'll know as soon as I release another video. You'll need to be a larger business willing to commit to buying at least 300 Microsoft 365 Copilot licenses for a year, with a list price just north of $100,000, and you'll need some channel to buy them other than through commercial direct, such as having an existing enterprise agreement in place. The reality is that in most cases, those who pull the trigger November 1st will be organisations much larger than 300 users in total, as despite my suggestion otherwise in a previous video looking at Copilot's pricing, I think most businesses won't necessarily buy this for all their users, especially sight unseen. If you're a smaller business or just a business that wants less than 300 licenses, you're unfortunately going to have to wait. And as of the recording of this video, we don't know how long that wait is going to be, though we do know that Microsoft does intend to eventually release Microsoft 365 Copilot for smaller organisations, given that the prerequisites include Microsoft 365 Business Standard and Premium, which are license tiers only available for organisations up to 300 users. While it wouldn't be fair to describe the community reaction on this issue as a backlash, there are certainly a lot of people involved in smaller organisations who have expressed a high level of disappointment with this situation. And I am seeing some people start to turn their back on the idea of Copilot having become disenchanted during the long wait, which has no timeline right now of ending. Microsoft hasn't offered an explanation for this phased rollout, which I think it should, and my personal opinion is that not doing so is a big communications misstep on their part after having invested so much in getting people connected with businesses of all sizes interested in and excited about this technology. There are those out there claiming Microsoft has turned its back on smaller businesses entirely on this issue. I don't at all subscribe to that position, and I think there are a handful of reasons why this extra delay might be happening, which we should all be open to understanding. So let me explain 3 purely speculative scenarios that I think are the most likely reasons for this delay that might help us to understand why Microsoft 365 Copilot can both be a great product for all in the long term while being so highly restricted in the short term. The first is that the process of turning on Microsoft 365 Copilot is potentially in itself resource intensive, and Microsoft may not have the headroom in its processing capacity to meet the demand that might come from just turning the Copilot option on for everyone at the same time. They don't want to have their Taylor Swift moment like Ticketmaster, so they're taking a more cautious approach. We know that Copilot relies upon a new way of indexing your Microsoft Graph data called semantic index, which enhances what Microsoft Search can already do in terms of contextual awareness of how your data is linked together. We also know from demos Microsoft has shared publicly that once semantic index is turned on, it provides enhancements to how Microsoft Search works across your entire tenant. This re-indexing is probably resource intensive and probably takes an amount of time to complete that's related in some way to the amount of data in the tenant. And it's possible if everyone had the opportunity to turn on Microsoft 365 Copilot on day one, the resources Microsoft has for this index building would be spread too thinly and it would take too long. I also suspect that across Microsoft tenants, it would be logical to assume that those smaller businesses who would be looking to buy Microsoft 365 Copilot on day one would be heavier than average Microsoft 365 users, and so have more data proportionally per user to index than the average large enterprise tenant. This is entirely conjecture on my part. I have no data to back it up, and Microsoft, so far as I'm aware, releases no data that would imply it. But I highly doubt that small business tenants that only predominantly use email, save almost no files, and only use half of their apps are the most likely target audience for a $30 a month AI add-on. However, if this theory is right, I'm not sure why Microsoft wouldn't just tell us. People still might be frustrated with their choice to prioritise enterprise customers over small businesses, but there would at least be an understandable explanation out there in the world. My second idea on this stems from something that was mentioned a few weeks ago at the launch event that announced Copilot in Windows. At that same event, it was mentioned, almost as an aside, that Microsoft 365 Copilot is in testing with both small businesses and consumers.
We want to help everyone unleash their creative superpowers. I'm excited to share Microsoft 365 Copilot is now in preview with a select group of consumers and small businesses.
Now, small businesses make sense based on what had been announced before, but consumers? By bringing these two different classes of user together in the same thought, it got me wondering whether in fact there will be different feature sets of Microsoft 365 Copilot itself. What we've seen of Copilot is, to some degree at least, two different products. You have the generative AI side of things where you get a panel in an app like Word and can work with it to generate content. And then you have the data side of things where using Microsoft Graph and Semantic Index, Copilot is able to surface relevant content from across your organisation and then feed it into the AI to generate a response. These are two sides of the same coin, but are different. And the data side is probably where very small businesses or consumers will differ the most in their needs from large and complex enterprises. I wonder in this whether in initial testing, Microsoft has found some of these data enablers on the back end that are designed for large enterprises with huge shared data sets make less sense on a smaller scale. They could also be more dangerous on a smaller scale, where generally there might be less focus on data governance and providing just enough access to users than there is in larger businesses with more IT management resources. For consumers and very small businesses, there might be a lot more importance given to the generative capabilities of Copilot versus the content search and contextual capabilities that are so important to larger business users. In the consumer case, a simple add a file box might be enough to enable most of the experiences that in the big corporate setting needs to rely upon a complex contextual data index. At Microsoft's recent OneDrive event, we were shown specific AI capabilities coming to consumer OneDrive that won't be added to OneDrive for Business. This, in my opinion, backs up the idea that there could be an interesting separation of these AI product stacks depending on your need and the scale of what you're doing. I've also reflected here on the fact that for the $30 a month price tag, what Microsoft is giving you with Microsoft 365 Copilot that it doesn't give you with Bing Chat Enterprise is that ability to leverage all your data in the background. But for users on business tier licenses, that $30 a month price tag is always going to be a big pill to swallow. As an add-on that costs more than your base license versus those on E3 or E5 where $30 is still expensive, but a more reasonable fraction of what you're already paying. If small businesses could benefit from Microsoft 365 Copilot without all the added search and indexing bells and whistles, is it possible a Copilot SKU with a different set of features but a lower price, more tailored to those business tier licenses, could be made available? This would parallel with what we see of Microsoft's other products like Windows 365 or Dynamics, so I don't think we should think it's outside the realm of possibility. And probably, if this did happen, small business users would get the option of implementing full Copilot, but perhaps they'd also need to upgrade from Business Premium to E5 while they're at it. Again though, if this is the case, I'm not really clear why Microsoft wouldn't just say so. They could announce the release of Microsoft 365 Copilot Enterprise and also announce that Microsoft 365 Copilot Business is still in development. Small businesses could then have the option, if they wanted, to upgrade to an E3 or E5 license to get Copilot, or wait for the version that works with their existing tier. The final speculative reason I have for this is that Microsoft just needs more data, and they have structured this general availability release to be as inaccessible as possible, to have it be minimally disruptive to the existing workflow it has as part of its early access program. A couple of weeks ago in my video about Copilot in Windows, I speculated that one of the reasons products seem to be getting pushed out before they're ready is more about marketing messaging than it is about the choices of product people. There was a huge incentive for Microsoft to get this out, as they had announced Copilot before Google got rolling on their productivity AI thing, yet their Duet AI for Workspace has been released for weeks. If Microsoft needs more data and testing to finish their development of the product, and features are still quickly flowing into it, restricting the actual availability under GA to large enterprises with IT teams used to working on long-term product adoption and potentially also used to working directly with Microsoft makes a great deal of sense. This is also probably the reason that would make least sense for Microsoft to convey publicly as part of their announcement. I can't imagine a narrative to tell the story of, in March we caught Google with their pants down, but in the month since, they pulled up their pants, they went out and bought a closet and they filled it with pants, and now they're racing ahead of us with their pants firmly pulled up and belts and suspenders in place too. I mean, even Steve Jobs couldn't have spun that one, let alone Satya Nadella. Of course, all these ideas are speculation, and there's a strong likelihood at this point we'll never really get an explanation for this lack of clarity and delay. But it would be good if Microsoft would clear up the confusion, and it would do a lot to help mitigate the deflation I've seen in people's excitement around this product. However, irrespective of the reason or whether Microsoft ever clarifies what it is, what we can be pretty sure of at this point is unless you meet those criteria I mentioned and you need 300 licenses, you won't be playing with Microsoft 365 Copilot on November 1st. Despite this, I'm still very positive about Microsoft 365 Copilot in the long term. I truly think this technology, whether we see it November 1st or not until 2024, and whether it succeeds in everything promised on day one or we have to wait as it continues to be developed, it will be a game changer for all businesses and importantly, all knowledge workers. While this delay is unfortunate, there are things you can continue to do to get ready for Copilot in your tenant. You can start thinking about your adoption strategy, how you'll get your team ready for integrating generative AI into their work, and importantly, how you'll organize your data to ensure you're giving users and Copilot just enough access. My book, Who's in the Copilot Seat, will soon be available in ebook and paperback formats and is designed to be a guide for non-technical leaders in smaller businesses on how AI generally and the productivity Copilot model specifically will impact and open up new opportunities for small businesses. There's a link down below where you can register your interest in getting this and get some great and unique offers to enhance your purchase when it's released. We have to remember that this is new technology, and to some extent we are learning alongside companies like Microsoft, Google and OpenAI on this one. While this doesn't totally excuse communication that leads to confusion for some potential customers, it does provide some explanation for it. Overall, I'd rather we receive a great product when it's ready than receive a lackluster one before it is, and I do believe that ultimately that's Microsoft's objective for all its customers with its AI products, even if sometimes it misses the mark. What do you think? Are you a user in one of the companies that would be buying Microsoft 365 Copilot on November 1st? Are you in a smaller business and frustrated by this delay? What do you think is the reason? Leave me your thoughts down in the comments. Thanks for watching through to the end. I hope this has been useful to you. Until the next video, bye bye.